Welcome everybody to the J&J Sports Express for week 6 of the 2024 NFL season. I'm your co-host for the next 30 minutes, Jeff Cadillac, with my co-host as usual, J.B. Ellis. J.B., how you doing tonight?
Doing well. Another great week in the NFL last weekend. We had some great games.
Yes, we did. There's a lot of games. Finally, teams are showing who they are, and the bad teams are showing who they are. And of course, there's always teams in the mix that don't know who they are, and they surprise everybody week to week. But we got some good games going this week, so let's get right into it. We've got a lot of things to talk about as well. Thursday night, you got NFC West matchup of San Francisco at Seattle. Seattle's a home dog, getting 3. 49ers, Seahawks, both kind of influx teams. Who do you like in this one, JB, and why?
So this is a really intriguing game. Both teams had sort of a trap game last week because I think they were looking ahead, to what they had this week. Seattle had the Giants trapped in between Detroit and San Francisco. They just didn't show up. The Giants had more offense, almost 2-1, and Gino didn't look very good. They couldn't get the ball going on the ground, and the Giants looked unstoppable last week, which when you look at Seattle throughout the year, that's not how they played all year. San Francisco blew a lead, lost by a point in Arizona. Another big loss. They're in desperate need of a win. And because of that, because they need the win more, so this way Seattle's a jump another game ahead of them, I do like the 49ers in this game. 49ers are banged up, but talent-wise, they still have more talent on both sides of the ball. And I think that, when it comes down to it, this team did go to the Super Bowl last year. They know what they need to do, and they are better on paper, even though the records don't show it right now. I think the 49ers will actually show up and win this game by a field goal. I'd probably buy a half a point if I was betting it to make it 2.5, but I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I don't think that, it's like years ago, maybe last year, the year before, where they're that much better than the Seahawks. The Seahawks have done great things this year with the talent that they have. They use their running game really well. Walker does well, as long as he's healthy. And the other back, their receivers, Metcalf's a stud. They got a couple of good young wide receivers. The defense is playing. Yeah, they could play better. They had some trouble against Detroit. They obviously had trouble against the Giants. But overall, I think I'm going to go with the 49ers in this matchup.
I have to agree with you with the 49ers in this game, but I agree with you, but on different points. First of all, Seattle, they were a dud against the Giants. After losing, basically giving up 42 points against Detroit on Monday night at Detroit, I figured they'd be good in a bounce back against the Giants. And in the beginning, they did, but the Giants fumbled the ball, took the ball 102 yards the other way for a touchdown, 7-0 Seattle lead. But after that, Seattle really didn't do anything. They scored one offensive touchdown. Geno Smith is looking pretty kind of bad. He's average. He's back to being average. Seattle was down 23-20 in this game. They had the field goal, and Isaiah Simmons comes through, blocks it, and gets returned for a touchdown. Giants win 29-20. You got this rookie running back, Tracy, who came in and ran for 120-something yards against Seattle. Seattle, by the way, is 20 in the league on their rushing defense. So look for San Francisco to run the ball big time on Thursday night to take a lot of pressure off Brock Purdy. But Seattle is not really that good of a team. I don't really find too much faith in what they're doing. The only convincing win they had was against Miami, and Miami basically had no quarterback in that game. Seattle is their defense goes to sleep at times. The defense just kind of doesn't make plays, and a well-scripted team like San Francisco should be able to beat Seattle. They know this team pretty well. San Francisco is coming off another double-digit, basically letdown game. A few weeks ago, they lost to the Rams. They were up double digits. They ended up losing. Then you got this week against Arizona. They were up by 13. They end up losing. It's sort of like a Super Bowl hangover for the 49ers. And yes, I agree with you completely. San Francisco is talented like everywhere on the team in every position. They have somebody that could definitely be an all-pro if they really, really put it all together. But I'm not I'm not crazy about Kyle Shanahan. He seems to be he loses big games, and I don't think he realizes the moment. He has a very talented team. 49ers are, again, desperate for a win here. Seattle's going nowhere. I like 49ers winning by at least a touchdown in this game. I give the ball to Jerome Ford. Let him, run right at Seattle, who can't even stop the run. And take it from there. Thursday night, I see 49ers winning by at least 7 points, 10 points. You never know. But I definitely like San Francisco here.
Yeah, so I mean, we both like San Francisco. We differ on how the game's going to play out. It's a division game. It's not going to be a blowout. I think it'll be close. I disagree with your assessment on Seattle. I think that their issue is their defense, but I don't think they're. I think they're way ahead of where they wanted to be with a first-year head coach with what he's done and with the young talent they have. But in the end, we're talking about results, and I think we both agree with the 49ers cover the spread in this game. Let's move on to Sunday.
Sunday, big game here. Washington Commanders plus 6.5 at Baltimore. I'll start this baby off right here. Washington, hey, they're ahead of what everybody thought they would be. Dan Quinn has definitely got this team motivated. Jaden Daniels, the quarterback of the Commanders, he's looking very good. Only one problem is this is a show me kind of game for the Washington Commanders. The 4 teams that they beat are Cincinnati, the Giants, Arizona, and Cleveland. Not exactly 4 playoff teams right now. Cincinnati, you could say, was a very good win. That was a shootout. The defense was certainly not there for the Commanders. Cincinnati's 1-4 right now, so who knows if they're even going anywhere this season. And their only loss was to Tampa Bay. But if they could somehow beat Baltimore, now Baltimore is beatable because they have the 31st ranked pass defense in the NFL. For many years under John Harbaugh, that secondary has been suspect. And if you get a patient quarterback in any position, look at what the Raiders did a few weeks ago at Baltimore. They were down against Baltimore, and they came back and they won because they exploited that secondary. The secondary is not as good. That's one of the biggest weak points on that team. Lamar Jackson, not a weak spot. Derrick Henry, but Cincinnati really had Derrick Henry last week. Because they had him to 41 yards until in overtime. Baltimore basically stole that game. They lost. Lamar Jackson lost that fumble in overtime. Cincinnati misses the kick. They go the other way. They win in overtime. This is a show me game for Washington. I actually like the spread here with Washington plus 6.5. I think they're a gutsy team. They're surprising, a lot of people. Dan Quinn is a defensive coordinator. He knows how to stop somebody like Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. You'll probably see a spotter in this game, maybe even a linebacker or a safety, or somebody linebacker safety, hybrid. I like Washington to keep it close. I think Baltimore maybe wins by a field goal, but don't be surprised if Washington upsets Baltimore. Baltimore's been kind of shaky this season. What do you think, JB?
So first of all, it's funny how little things can change a team season. So Washington, week 2 against the Giants. The Giants had an issue with their kicker. They knew he was hurt going into the game. They didn't put a backup kicker on the active roster. Giants proceeded to lose the game because of such. And the Commanders are on a nice winning streak. They gave Daniels a little bit of confidence, a little bit of swagger, and they've got to run off 4 straight wins. The Ravens started off horrible. Went into Dallas, spanked them, a couple of weeks in a row, played great games. Yes, Sunday, they didn't have their best game. They should have lost. But Cincinnati does what Cincinnati does. Joe Burrow throws a late interception. Not his fault, but certainly happened. Then overtime, Lamar fumbles the snap. The Bengals get it. They play very conservative with one of the best quarterbacks in the league, maybe because of what happened on the previous drive to end the game. They miss a field goal because of a bad hold. And Baltimore steals a game they have no business winning that they should have lost 2 times. They held, like you said, they held Derrick Henry in check. Everything looked really good, and they blew the game. Now you see these 2 teams that have had some great fortunes meet. Daniels looks really good, probably the best rookie quarterback in the draft at the moment at number 2. I think that they're going to keep it close. I don't know if they're ready to beat the Ravens yet. But what I do like about the Commanders, you know who had a big game last week? A guy by the name of Austin Eckler. Maybe he's healthy. And he's an X factor because if he can get going, you can dump the ball to him out of the backfield. So it gives Daniels a little option if there's pressure. Then he also can run the ball pretty decent. Not that you need him to be the primary running back, but he just gives you another option. It just takes a lot of pressure off Daniels. So I do think that they're going to be able to keep it close. Their defense has played decent, not lights out. Like you said, the Ravens are suspect against the pass. The Ravens do what the Ravens do. They keep running Derrick Henry. Lamar is a threat to run on quarterback runs. He's staying into the pocket a lot better this year than I've seen him in a while. He's looking for that pass first option. If it's not there and the pocket's collapsing and there's nowhere for him to go, he takes off or the design runs. But like anything, you don't want to have the guy who makes your team take extra hits if you don't need to. So you want to see him throw the ball when the pocket breaks before running. But he's definitely a threat. I think the Ravens are just a little bit better. But I like the Commanders with the points in this one.
Yeah, we agree on that. I mean, Commanders, like I said, this is really a game for Washington to really see if they've made some progress because they've beaten some 4 kind of bad teams, lost to Tampa Bay in the opener. So, let's see if they're, fakers or are they the real thing. So I think it'll be a good game, but I think it'll be closer than the spread suggests.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be probably one of the most entertaining games of the weekend. So let's talk about this one. So the Lions -3 going into Dallas. I'll take this one to start. So Dallas, who got a victory that they had no business getting in Pittsburgh. Lions coming off a bye. Heading back to the spot where it all started to unfold last year. Dan Campbell made his bad decision to go for 17 times in a row. And things started to unravel. And, obviously the Lions are a very talented team. They're coming in well rested. I think they go back into Dallas. And because of all that, they're going to give the Cowboys a hurting that they haven't had in ages. Dallas hasn't won a game at home, which is very rare because they're phenomenal. But the Lions are hungry, and they're still playing catch up to that team in Minnesota that hasn't lost yet. Granted, they played the Jets this week in London, but they're still undefeated. And Sam Darnold is playing well. And the Lions, though, they can't afford to get too far behind if they will have home field advantage. And they have that great advantage over San Francisco right now, who has a couple of losses, 3 of them to be exact. So you got to go out and win the games you can win so you can catch Minnesota. So I don't see the Lions losing this game. Dallas, on the other hand, still very banged up on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they have no run game. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is phenomenal. They have a good tight end in Ferguson. But I just think the Lions on paper and in person are a much better team, and I see them winning by a touchdown, if not more.
Well, I like the Lions in this game too, and you were talking about the 2-point conversions last year. If you talk about that game last year, Detroit at Dallas, the referees made a big mistake because the guy did report. They show it on the film, but for some reason the referee was looking away when he did it. Detroit walks away with that win. Now, if Detroit wins that game, this game is not as, like, how should I say, revved up for Detroit, because now Detroit is wanting to go back to Dallas to prove something. They have a chip on their shoulder. They're saying to themselves, we got robbed last year, and I can tell you this year, we're not going to get robbed. And if you watch this game specifically, you will see that the announcers are even going to make a note about it, a comment about what happened last season. They'll probably show the videotape. They'll go through the whole 9. If they know it, the fans know it, Dan Campbell knows it. Dallas, on the other hand, I agree with you. They shouldn't have won that game on Sunday night. Pittsburgh almost stopped them. They scored a touchdown with 20 seconds late. It was a weather delay. The game ended like 1 o'clock in the morning. I watched it. Pittsburgh only needed to make one stop, and they couldn't do it. And somehow Dallas found, backup running back Dowdle, and they found a pass to Tolbert in the end zone with 20 seconds left. And the play before, they fumbled the ball. And if Pittsburgh had recovered, the game would have been over. I like Pittsburgh in that game. Dallas had no business winning that game. They scored their 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter on 2 drives. But Dallas basically has no run game. Ezekiel Elliott, he's done. Dowdle, you can forget about it. It's not going to be a consistent thing. It looks like there's a little infighting between CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, which look, they're both getting big money. Just play the game. You got what you wanted. You got your contract extensions. Jerry Jones, listen, as usual, he makes the wrong choice. Should have let these guys play their option out because now they have nothing to play for. They got their money. So what? They don't make the Super Bowl. They got their guaranteed money. It doesn't matter. Detroit, on the other hand, Dan Campbell, those guys are still hungry. They want to get back to the Super Bowl. They want it. They know that they made a mistake in the championship game last year, so they're on a mission. They're coming off a bye. They're well rested. They beat up on Seattle on Monday night before their bye. I like Detroit because the secondary is definitely getting stronger every week. You got Darius Slay back there with veteran leadership. You got guys on this team. And how could you ignore the 1-2 punch of the running backs on Detroit, Gibbs and Montgomery? I mean, how do you stop them? When Gibbs is on fire and he goes out for a breather, Montgomery comes in and he runs right down your throat. I mean, as a defensive guy, you shake your head. You don't know what to do because both of these guys are dangerous. Both of these guys could get 100 yards in together, each one of them in a game, and run right over you and look what happened with Jared Goff. He was 18 for 18 against Seattle. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, and they put up 42 points. Do they put up 42 points in this game? I don't know. I don't think so, but I still think they're going to win by more than 3. I see them winning by at least 10 points in this game. I think Dallas is so overrated. Micah Parsons, he's not in. Dexter Lawrence is probably still out. So I agree with you on this. I like Detroit moving forward at Dallas.
So next, we have a really intriguing game. I'll let you start. The Broncos coming in off a win against the Raiders, where they looked good, and the Chargers coming in off the bye. So they didn't lose.
Chargers before their bye, they lost 17-10 against Kansas City. And the funny thing is they were up 10-0 in that game. And there's been a known statistic that if Pat Mahomes is down by 10, he has an incredible record of coming back against 10-point deficits. And the Chargers, they were just shut down completely after they were up 10-0, or for 2 miscues by Kansas City. The defense really stepped up. The Chargers, Justin Herbert, he's got, he seems to be a really good quarterback, but for some reason, the Chargers don't win, no matter what. He has great games. They don't. I don't know what goes on. People disappear on that team again. It's a question. I don't know what's going on, but the Denver Broncos, I mean, look, their defense is incredible. I mean, they whitewashed, the Raiders last week when they needed it. They were going to go down 17-3 in that game. They were down 10-3, and Gardner Minshew, who has been relegated to the backup, we'll get into that later, on the Raiders, he threw a pass he shouldn't have thrown, and Surtain takes it 100 yards back the other way. Now, instead of going from the Raiders 17-3 up, it's now a 10-10 game. And the Raiders they just fell off the map after that one. Yeah, they just put a fork in them because they were done. They ended up losing 34. It was 34-10, and Raiders got a dummy touchdown at the end, made it looking respectable at 34-18. But I'll tell you something. Denver's defense, I've been saying this all season, is underrated. And they have guys on this defense in the secondary especially that will surprise you. And believe me, when you think some guy is open, you can forget it. Chargers are better than the Raiders, maybe not by much, but I like the Broncos in this game. I think Bo Nix is finally getting a feed on it, and he's learning. He's got Sean Payton behind him. I'm not crazy about Sean Payton, but he's a better coach than most of the coaches in the NFL. I like the Broncos at home laying the 3. I think they beat the Chargers by 7 at least.
You know what I love? Denver has a quarterback. Denver has a defense. You know what I love about San Diego or Los Angeles now? I always want to call them San Diego. I don't know why. They were so much better there. It was so much fun. I love San Diego. But anyway, LA, they have a quarterback. They have a defense. Both coaching styles are similar. So I love the fact that the Chiefs, although they're in first place and undefeated right now, there's actually 2 teams in the division that are on the rise, and eventually we'll catch them. Not going to be this year. And this is kind of the battle of who's number 2. Is it the Chargers or is it the Broncos? Because that's what they're battling for right now. Who's the second spot in this division? The Chargers have a more experienced quarterback in Herbert. They have nobody at wide receiver. They have a bunch of guys that I'm shocked are doing as well as they are. They're running the ball with Dobbins down people's throats, which is something they didn't do previously. Eckler ran the ball, but they didn't run a power running style like they're running now. Meanwhile, over in Denver, Bo Nix looks good. Surprisingly, he was one of the 3 quarterbacks I would have drafted last year if I was a GM. And I love when guys make me look good. And that's what he's doing. He looks confident back there. I like what I'm seeing. Denver, again, another team that they don't have much talent around Bo Nix just yet. Give them some time, but their defense is good. So this is going to be a fun game. I don't know who I like in this game. I think I'm going to take the Broncos because they're at home. That's my analysis on it because I think it's an evenly matched game. And it kills me to see that the Raiders, after all this time, they decided to bench Minshew and go back to the kid, Aiden O'Connell, who should have been starting from the beginning of the year. Because, again, if you're not going to win the Super Bowl, what's better? You try and develop a quarterback that could be your future rather than playing a guy who's a has-been and never going to take you anywhere. Play the guy for the future. And the Broncos took advantage of a bad quarterback in Minshew and a bad Raiders team that's going nowhere.
Raiders made a big, we'll comment about it. Raiders made a big mistake in signing Antonio Pierce to an interim head coach comes in, wins a few games. All of a sudden, they think the team is making, strides in the right direction. Antonio Pierce is not really that great of a coach. Anybody could win a few games in the NFL. And signing him to, with no quarterback, and this team is definitely not coached well. Las Vegas is not coached well. And I have to agree with you. Minshew or O'Connell, who's going to develop this guy? Who's going to develop him? Who is on there that's going to raise O'Connell to the level of a winning NFL quarterback? There's nobody on that staff. But the Broncos, you got Sean Payton. He's worked with Drew Brees. Okay? They only won 1 Super Bowl. They should have won more. But the fact of the matter is, he's a lot better coach. And Chargers, yes. Jim Harbaugh, he's a very good coach. I don't like the way he jumps around a lot, but he gets teams winning. That's the thing that he does. The Chargers, I don't see them winning this game. I like the Broncos. Just, let me tell you something. A few weeks ago against the Jets, I like the Broncos in that game too. And I'm telling you right now, that defense, it surprises a lot of people. They're not ready for it. And Bo Nix is starting to come around. And I think you also like the Broncos in this game, right?
Yeah, like I said, I think it's an evenly matched game. I don't see one team being that much better. I think they're almost kind of the same. Both have good coaches. Both have good quarterbacks. The Chargers are a little bit better offensively, and their quarterback's a little bit more developed. But they both have really good defenses, and the Broncos are at home. So I'm going to take the home team
I see some turnovers by the Chargers in this game created by the Bronco defense, and they're going to capitalize on it.
Interesting. So before we talk about the next game, Monday night, first of all, the Jets GM, Aaron Rodgers, decided it was time for a new coach. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers isn't the GM, but Robert Saleh, as soon as he got back from London the following morning, was let go. Security escorted him out of the building in the most Jets fairy tale ever because the Jets can't handle any situation right. And they will go nowhere this year because they're the Jets. And perfectly, surprisingly, instead of elevating Hackett, they elevate the defensive coordinator. So Aaron Rodgers has another fall guy when they lose this season. So, I mean, it's as the Jets turn, watching on Channel 7 every day at 3 p.m., the saga, because it's a soap opera. The Jets do Jets things. So how they're only a 2.5-point dog when they look like dog blank in London, this team does not look good. I don't think if we coached this team, they would look good. If you got Vince Lombardi out of the grave and they coached him, they would not look good. They're led by a guy on offense who's about himself. And every time you try and give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's a great player, something happens that he's about himself. The guy can play, but he hasn't looked like he can play. And he's about himself. That's all he cares about. Aaron Rodgers. The guy's won one Super Bowl, which is great because a lot of guys don't ever win a Super Bowl, but he should have won about 3. And we can debate that another time, but he's definitely underperformed throughout his career, even though he's an MVP.
Salah, I'll tell you this. I'll add to it, and we'll try to move this thing along. Salah, never liked him as a coach. He's not the kind of guy that develops players. I've been saying that for the whole tenure that he's been with the Jets. He's not a developer of players. He needs a team full of superstars to win. He never any Jet that was there under his tenure, they weren't raised to that next level. They didn't get better. They got worse. Rodgers' problem is his ego, number one. Number two, he's denying all stories about him having to do with Salah's departure, which I don't buy in 1 second. He's a good liar. Number three, the thing about Rodgers is he's old already. If anything you can tell, look at the last season in Green Bay. Football ages you faster than any other sport, okay? His last season at Green Bay was a disaster. And what happened? Then he gets an Achilles tear the next season with the Jets. He's out. The Jets, look, the guy, he puts the finger on everybody else, but he's the commander of the offense. There's nobody else to blame on this offense except him. He's not making the passes he used to make. He's not calling the plays he used to play. The team is not producing because they don't also believe in him anymore. He is not Aaron Rodgers five years ago.
Exactly.
You know? And the defense can only just do so much. The defense is really good. Now, the reason why the spread is the way it is because the Bills themselves have not been playing well. They were a no-show against Baltimore on the Sunday night or the Monday night, and I looked at them as a bounce back against Houston, and they had a hangover from that game. They were down 17-3 at the half. They made a nice comeback, but then they had suspect play calling that just at the end when they had the ball and they could have gone to overtime, but instead they do 4 passes. They gave Houston enough time, and Houston just went down the field. Not really down the field. They still kicked a 50-something yard field goal and won it in regulation. So the Bills, the reason why they're only a 2.5-point favorite is because actually I believe the Jets are going to get a bump in this game because now they have a new coach. Always when somebody comes in, a new coach, that bump, they always have that first game bump, then they go back to being terrible or whatever happens. And I think the defense this week, the Jets have something to play for. They're on Monday night. The Bills, they got their own problems trying to figure things out. Josh Allen last week, 9 for 30 against the Houston Texans. What are you talking about? It sounds like he played against the steel defense of the 70s or something like that with those stats. He's just, he's so overrated. He has some games, first of all, the Bills haven't really beat anybody that's spectacular. Who'd they beat? Arizona, Jacksonville, Miami. Big deal. You get somebody like Baltimore, they're a no-show. 35-10, okay? Then they don't show up against Houston for half the game. All of a sudden, they got, a miraculous recovery the next, in the second half. I like the Jets in this game. They're at home. They're loose. They got nothing. Let me tell you something. Nobody's expecting them to win this game. Nobody's expecting them to even come in close. They're going to surprise, and Aaron Rodgers will have a good game because the Bills right now are, they're injured. And they need a lot. They got to figure out what's going on in Buffalo, and they're not going to do it this week on Monday night. So I like the Jets in this game, JB.
So, I mean, they're definitely an Ets that are in New York, but they're not the Mets because that's the only team in New York that has a shot of winning this week that has the ETS at the end. Jets are a horrible team. I don't care, like I said, who comes back to coach them. Rodgers doesn't look good at his age. The Bills, on the other hand, coaching cost them at the end of that game. I know you think you have Josh Allen. You can do whatever you want. You're going to be able to move the ball. Guess what? You were playing a good team with a decent defense, and they stopped you when you gave a game away a win. You go to overtime, you probably win the game. But when all said and done, there's more talent in Buffalo. Josh Allen is a decent quarterback. Is he the top quarterback in the league or top 3? Probably not. I mean, I would take Burrow, Mahomes, and Herbert before him. But he's still a very good quarterback. The only thing that scares me out of this whole mess is the Jets, for some reason, play really good against Buffalo. So I don't think it'll be a blowout. And I do agree with you. When you do have a new coach, you do get that bump. The guys play up because everyone gives the attention to the new coach right away. So they all follow whatever the game plan is. But I think still when it's said and done, I got to go with talent and better coaching, even though last week it wasn't there. I'm going to go with the Bills. So, Jeff, where can people find you?
Find me on Twitter here on, Sideline Sports every Wednesday night on the J&J Sports Express, which I repost on Twitter. You can find me Best Bet on Twitter at Jeff Cadillac 1 on Fridays. Best Bet of the week is already 3-1-1. You can find all my games with the full analysis of all the games for free on my website at jeffcadillac.com.
jeffcadillac.com, great website. You can see us scrolling across the bottom. Also, SidelineSportsNet.com, Sideline Sports website. You can find me at JB_the program on X. Sideline Sports every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Confidential coming up in an hour and a half at 7. Playoff edition. We're going to talk about what's going on in the MLB playoffs. We will see you guys next week. Anything to say before we leave, Jeff?
Everybody enjoy the games, and as usual, bet with your head and not over it.